I want to show you one exercise technique or practice technique that works real well for me and for a lot of the students that I've taught. And it's sort of a simplification of the lead guitar process, but it works. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but it works a lot of the time. I'm going to show you an example of playing over a 1-4-5 chord progression, which is obviously so common to so many styles of music. But this is just as an example. You could use this exercise over other chord progressions. If the song you're working on, let's say you're working on the end of Stairway to Heaven, and it's got the chords A minor, G, F. Well, that's not 1-4-5. You can use the same kind of concept though. Okay? What I want to do is I want to take my minor pentatonic pattern. I'm going to do this in the key of A, so I'm going to take my minor pentatonic pattern in A at the 5th fret. In A, the 4 chord is D. I'm going to take my minor pentatonic pattern and slide it up to the 10th fret where the note D is. And I'll play my D minor pentatonic pattern right there. And for E, the 5 chord, 2 more frets. E, here. Okay? And this is what I'm going to do then. If you just fool around with these patterns a little bit and try to duplicate what you do in each pattern, such as this. See, I did the same exact thing over the A, the D, and the E. And all I did to do that was to slide my pattern up. Okay? Now let me put it into a more lead guitar kind of context. Okay? So you see how I played the exact same thing in all 3 chords, over all 3 chords. I played it over what would be my D chord, what would be my, I played it over what would be my A chord, what would be my D chord, and what would be my E chord. And it's a great way to practice all of your riffs, is to figure them out. You know, I use A as a default teaching pattern because it's just something people play in a lot and you're used to being at that 5th fret. Figure out a little riff in A at the 5th fret, slide it up to that 10th fret and do it up there for D. Slide it up to the 12th fret, I'm talking about where your first finger lands, and do it in E. And get used to doing that. Get used to doing all of your little riffs that you come up with, and maybe those that you've learned through this course, and move them from the 1 chord to the 4 chord to the 5 chord, and practice them in that manner, and it gets you used to changing with the chords. When you're playing over a real song with a real band or with a CD, you need to change with the chords a little bit. You can't typically stay in the same position. There's ways to do that. You can do that if you learn all your arpeggios properly. But if another method of playing lead guitar is to move with the chord as opposed to staying in one place. So you've got 2 basic methods. You either stay in one place, which requires you to know your arpeggios. If I'm going to play lead guitar over a 1-4-5 in A, but I want to stay right here, even when the D chord comes up, then I need to know my D shape arpeggios. And then when the E chord comes up, I need to know the E arpeggios as well, because those are my important notes. When the band plays that D chord, I got to be hitting notes from within the A scale that fit over the D arpeggio, and likewise for E. Well, that's a little tricky. That takes a little more time to get used to doing that. You'll need to work with your arpeggios a bunch to do that. So the other way of pursuing lead guitar playing is to move with the chord. And I suggest highly that you take this main pentatonic shape and move it with the chord. Basically, wherever your bar chord would go, that's where you put that shape. If your bar chord is A at the 5th fret, that's where your shape is. If your bar chord would then go to D at the 10th fret, I'm simplifying, it could be this D over here, but whatever, it's a D chord. Slide your pentatonic pattern up to that D at the 10th fret, play it there. Then when the E chord comes up, 12th fret, D chord again, and then back to the A chord. Try this when you're playing lead, but try it especially when you're practicing, when you're figuring out patterns and riffs, and you're starting to say, all right, I've got the riff, Now, how do I use it over a chord progression? Start moving it around with your chords, okay? I mentioned Stairway to Heaven. I'm not going to show you the lead for Stairway to Heaven. That's copyrighted material. But a method that you might think about that is similar to what I just talked about in a different pattern than 1-4-5. You've got an A minor chord, a G chord, and an F chord. So what if you did... In other words, you're following the chord. You're just moving your pentatonic pattern down with the chord. All right?